and we recognize folks are going to be coming in, ebbing and flowing as we go. So, but we're going to get cruising. So, welcome everybody. I am Bridget Marty. I work in our Carlson Business Career Center with our working professionals and alumni. And I have with me Nicole Santani. You'll see her, and you'll hear a lot from her as well. So we are
Hi,
both going to be.
everyone.
We're both going to be your host today. And then we have Julie Bartels, who is our producer extraordinaire, who is doing like 8 things at once while supporting us and a couple other events happening at the same time. So you got part of our team here, and we're excited to share time and space with you. We have about 45 minutes to skate through a lot of content, but we want to rest assured all of you, we are going to be monitoring chat. So if you have questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. When Nicole's not presenting or when I'm not presenting or Julie, one of us will always be able to answer a question, throw a resource in. We will stay on after the panel ends for kind of any questions and answers. You all have access to coaching and follow-up. We'll also send the deck and the recording out to folks after the fact as well. So rest assured, you're going to be well resourced. But for now, we invite you to just bring yourselves into this space, knowing that you're all probably coming from different areas, spaces, and needing to just center us here today. So we wanted to start with kind of a fun question. What is your anti-pet peeve? So something that is kind of like small, but then brings you really big joy. So a little thing that someone else can do for you, something nice that kind of happens, something that just makes you happy. And if you could share your answers in the chat, we'd love to see them. We always like to start on a positive note when we're kind of talking through what can be a tough topic. So what is something small that brings you big joy in life? Little things that can brighten your day. And you can navigate to the bottom of your screen and you should see a little chat bubble. You can click on that and throw chat in. I know some folks are used to using Teams or another tool, so it can take a minute to acclimate to Zoom.
I love this question. You know what mine would be?
Tell us.
Matching or anything like themed. Like if I'm going to go to a Timberwolves game, I want to be like dressing the part. And like on a holiday, I love it if we have like matching holiday pajamas, that type of thing. Just brings me a lot of joy.
Love it. Yeah, matching. I do love. I would agree. I love matching. Last week, I always like matching. I like matching outfits with anybody at work.
Wait
So
a second, we're matching.
yeah, we totally are. I unblurred my background so we didn't look exactly alike though. So I can. I love it. Snacks. Oh, coffee. Absolutely. Oh yeah, matching socks. Yes, Julie, if you can. Yeah, that is 100%. I love, like, I know that something that's like really small but like brightens my day is just like a clean car, like inside and out, like just like having my car just be clean and like it makes me feel like I have control in the world when I don't always. So, yeah, so great. So, I love seeing these answers. Yeah, going for a run, kind of moving those bodies, little things that just can kind of bring us some joy. So, it's just kind of thinking about that, and especially when we're in times of kind of transition and stress, always a good reminder to ground us. And what are those little things that can really bring us some joy? So, as I mentioned, Coach Nicole and I are going to be guiding you through this session today, and we have a lot of content. So we're going to begin with a little bit of context. You're going to be hearing from me quite a bit in the beginning as I kick off our 5 areas to focus when you're navigating a layoff or a career detour. Anything where there's significant ambiguity and you don't quite know where to start first or where to go. That's what our session is really focused on. As mentioned, we will have time for questions. We'll hold out at the end and stay on if you want to chat that way. But again, as a friendly reminder, this is it's a 45-minute session that could be 3 hours, no problem. We could spend many hours sharing this content, but it's meant to help give you kind of a like, okay, here's a blueprint about how I might approach this if I'm in this situation of a layoff or a detour, or I'm anticipating one. Here's what we might be able to do. So Nicole and I will be hopping back and forth and chatting through the slides as we go. But first with context, and again, just grounding us, you are not alone. If you are in the midst of a layoff or you're anticipating a layoff, you are not alone. Current research is showing about 40% of the US workforce will experience some sort of layoff. There's layoffs, there's being underemployed. There is being in kind of perpetual, like being like in contract roles when you want to be maybe in a full-time role someplace, or having a portfolio career when you want to be having like one type of role. So we know that right now, this market is experiencing a lot of different factors all kind of converging at once. We're still kind of recovering from the pandemic, when employers were, they saw a huge exodus and they were really struggling to get folks in. And then they now have kind of over indexed and are way more conservative with their hiring. And so we're seeing hiring numbers are lower than they have been in the last 14 years. And this can really be a surprise to folks in your world or folks on this call who are like, oh, I had no idea. Whenever we're working with job seekers, they can just be like, well, those, I'm sure Nicole sees this too, just folks that are like, I had no idea it was like this, like that it was this bad. And bad meaning there's a lot of seekers and not as many roles. Like it's a really competitive space. And it's like, yeah, because it wasn't getting as much press as it has now just starting to get. But we've really been seeing this for about the last 18 months with some of the layoffs and things happening around the Twin Cities and nationally, and just a slower market, lower hiring numbers, but still amazingly qualified candidates out in the market that are trying to get these roles. So again, you're not alone. What we're wanting to think about right now, and what our session is focused on for the next 40 minutes, is what you can control. What is within your control and what's not. Because again, the broader market isn't something that's in our control, but I have asked for a crystal ball. I would like to have one to be able to tell the future and know what's coming down the pipeline. But unfortunately, it's not in the budget yet, so we'll get there. So as we are kind of navigating our way forward, we're using this language of like, what are we going to cover when we talked about there's 5 areas that we want to help you kind of consider as you're building a blueprint for how to move forward during this time of ambiguity. We're going to work from bottom up by talking through these 5 broad areas. And you'll see throughout this presentation today, we have checklists, we've got tips, we have articles linked and embedded that you'll get after the workshop today. We won't go through every single thing, but again, it's a blueprint for you to go back through and work your way through, because we know we love a checklist. So first thing is first is we're going to start with the daily life dashboard, and Nicole's going to talk about that. Next, we'll be moving into talking more about what's kind of happening in the feels, the earth suit, the mind, body, and spirit. Then you'll find the preparing and launching your search segments, which are much more tactical, but we want to be really strategic with those tactics. And then we'll end with kind of maintaining motivation and momentum. So at this point, we're going to go forward with Nicole and the daily life dashboard. What is this daily life dashboard, Nicole?
Yes. Okay. So let's think like Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, that we have to start with the facts, what is known, before we can start getting into launching that search and moving towards like how we're motivated. So know the facts. And with this, it's getting your mind around the financials and the realities there, so that you can just kind of really think through your financial forecasting. So thinking thoughtfully about your severance package, taking a look at your budget, what needs to change, what needs to stay the same as you think about setting yourself up well. But we want to work with the facts instead of working with assumptions, or we want facts over fear. And that's going to serve us well. Knowledge is power. So as we think about the financials, getting that in order is first step. And then as we think about our daily routines, think about how much of our daily routine centers around our work life. And when there's been a shift, there's a recalibration that happens. So it's like almost like hitting the pause button, like ground level. Where am I at? What can stay the same? What can change? Here's a few examples, but of course we all have different variables that would come into play. But the motivator here would be, what is going to provide stability, ease, and practicality? And are there shifts that I'm going to make around childcare, or around kind of like those daily routines, around how I'm going to connect with other people or do errands? Look at your calendar too over the next few months, and just kind of take note of some possible shifts that might set you up well. But this is going to be so foundational, and it'll serve you well as you move forward with these next steps.
Love it. Thank you, Nicole. And as she mentioned, this Maslow's hierarchy is with the foundational level. For those of you who are like, I do not remember that. It is about like food, shelter, safety, right? So we think about those daily numbers, like the basics, like what are my finances? What do I need to know? Again, we don't have mental choreography for how to do this. Like most folks, it's not like something like, oh, I've been laid off. I know exactly what to do. So it's understandable you won't have these things top of mind. So knowing what your numbers are, knowing those financials, but then like thinking about your life going forward and what that looks like. I was gonna almost ask Nicole to share her dashboard, your actual paper dashboard that she just showed me. She's got a cool dashboard to keep her organized. So as Nicole and I have shared, we are coaches. We have seen many seekers. Our office does about 4,000 appointments annually, and we work, as many of you know on this call, with alumni and current students. And this topic of how to navigate forward in times of transition with regards to the mental well-being and your physical and that kind of spiritual well-being is really important. Holding space with our candidates when they are navigating these tough times is a big part of what our work is. So we did put extra emphasis on this part as part of our session today because I think it's an often overlooked element of navigating a layoff or a career detour. Career gives us a lot. It's full of nutrients and it brings a lot into our lives, especially in the form of routine, structure, achievement. And when we lose that, we lose a big part of our daily lives. And so often when I'm working with someone who's experienced a layoff, they'll say, it's taken me a few weeks to kind of get my bearings or to just feel centered again. I feel a little out of sorts, which makes absolute sense. So normal feelings in a very abnormal situation, allow yourself space to mourn that, but also reminding yourself of all of the great nutrients that work brings to us, and how we have to kind of try to keep some of those best routines in place. So just like you do to be a good employee. So when you're working, you want to make sure you're like eating well and sleeping and all those things. We want to do those things too, even though we're in a time of transition. And when we're in mourning space and phase, yeah, it's okay to, maybe wear the comfy pants a little longer. That's okay. But then we want to make sure that we are mindful of getting back into some of those really good routines. So the sleep, exercise, nutrition, but also thinking about the mental headspace that we're in. When we have time on our hands, our brains get busy. And our brains can get busy really thinking about what could go wrong and what's not going right. And so we encourage you, as you just try to, as much as possible, stay in abundance mindset. My analogy for this is we want you to be thinking about as the approach you would take when you're grocery shopping on a full stomach on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. with a full bank account. You are not hungry. You are making the healthiest, best choices. As opposed to when we're super hungry, we're hangry, and we're racing into the grocery store or the gas station 2 minutes before it's going to close, and we've got $2 on us, and then it's like Cheetos and beef jerky, here I come, which are good, but they're going to sustain us, right? So we want to be in that abundance, in that kind of grounded, I want to build choice for myself instead of deficit, where we're starting to make kind of tough choices. Also, growth mindset, meaning, again, this is not a choreography that you have grounded in your brain. We don't know how to navigate through transition. Ambiguity is inherently losing control. We don't have control of a lot of this. So there's going to just be a lot of like, I am still learning in this process. I'm still figuring out my way forward. And that is very humbling. But all of you have been students currently or at some point, and you all learned a lot of things, and you're going to learn a lot in this process. And then we also talk about just being rejection proof. Rejection is part of this process. So we'll get into that a little bit later towards the end when we talk about maintaining momentum and motivation. But this is the wellness wheel, when we think about all the different elements that contribute to our overall well-being, career and our occupation is a big part of that. And there's research that from Dr. Martin Seligman that reminds us of all of those different nutrients that happen in the daily work environment. And some of you may recall, like during the pandemic times, how some of these things we lost, right? So when we're in the work environment, work gives us a sense of confidence and like mastery over something. And we're getting to like be in the space and we can focus and we can really get some cool work done. We also build relationships with cool colleagues like Nicole and Julie and Coach Will, who's on the call. Like we get a chance to like have a relationship and hopefully have those friendships too. We're doing something that's bigger than ourselves. We're contributing to something. We have that sense of achievement. And we're also, like we're active. There's something that we're doing. When we are not in that work environment 40, 50 hours a week, we lose those and we have to replace them. So something for you to think about, and you'll see at the bottom of these slides, there's some elements of like, how might you think about reactivating things? So for example, I met with an alum the other day who we were talking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, why don't you tell me about how things are going with your search? And she said, I didn't do anything for my search today. Like she just had to like fess it up right away. And I said, good. And then instead she told me all these errands that she ran to prepare for a birthday party for a family member. And I said, that's great. You were checking off that achievement bucket. That's some of the stuff that you miss when you're working, is that sense of achievement and knocking tasks off. So good, you took care of that today. That's part of your overall well-being. In addition, you can't go through this alone. You have to bring in people to support. Never Search Alone is one of the books that we would recommend that you read, but you're going to need support through this. And sometimes they may be leaning on a partner or a best friend, but many minds are going to help with this. So leveraging our team, therapists, mentors, looking at your overall support system. This is a good moment to just reflect, who are 2 or 3 people in my life that I could lean on for some of this support. Maybe it's the folks that are going to be the support to have fun, like who's part of your fun factor, but also who are your board of personal advisors for your career? Do you have a mentor? Are there other job seekers? Having your people that you can go to. I highly discourage leaning on the person who is directly closest to you in your life. So if you have a spouse or your roommate, that can't be your only person. Having a couple of folks who are really adders and are going to help bring things into your life are going to be helpful. So thinking now, even jotting down on a sheet of paper, who are 2 or 3 people that you would have as part of that, your personal network. As a reminder, feel free to put questions in the chat. And if there's anything that needs to get elevated, Coach Nicole or Julie will let me know, right? Got it. Okay.
And
Next.
Brittany, I would just say here,
Yeah.
with this layer of our building triangle,
Wait, which
this
one?
is the layer to double down on, heading
Oh,
into an ambiguous time of transition. Is I would just like add, as I spend so much of my days talking to job seekers, when this layer is in place, it really helps it helps us navigate the ambiguous.
oh my goodness. So much, so much. As we are moving to our next layer, and I promise you won't be hearing from me as much, but I'm going to talk through this layer and then hand it over to Nicole. Your search. So you may be like, great, this is the stuff I came here for. I thought this is what they were going to be talking about. True, but we want to set a good foundation again, knowing your numbers, knowing the resources you've got, making sure that you're being thoughtful and mindful about mind, body, and spirit, replacing those work nutrients. Then we get into the search. This again is more of the checklisty part of things. We think about how you're preparing for that search. First, know your resources. Put a bookmark on your web browser with some of those great resources that we've listed here. Also, if you have resources that you've used, maybe you are experiencing or have experienced a layoff or in a job search, please throw links into the chat. What were tools, resources that were helpful for you? We always appreciate, thinking about like searching resources, thought partners, or, strategic thought voices out there, influencers that you find to be helpful. The Minnesota Dislocated Worker Program has great resources. We put in like Teal HQ, which is a nice job searchers portal that you can like make your own dashboard. A lot of dashboard talk today. You can put a dashboard in, you can track your applications. But it's like kind of getting yourself ready. What are the tools that you're going to need for this search? So as again, invite you share what are some resources that you really like that have been helpful. And we'd love to have you throw those ideas into the chat. And we will collect those. We can add those in and put those into our follow-up with you. So other sites, anything else that you found to be really helpful? Yes, we would love to hear from you guys. Please, any resources? Instagram, TikTok, any of that? Any? No? As you think of them, please add them in. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Usually. Great. We'll keep tracking those. Thank you for adding those in. So you're going to kind of pull your bookmarks, resources all together, have your tools, build your toolkit. Um, we can't pack a bag to go someplace unless we know where we're going, right? So thinking thoughtfully about what is it that you are looking for next in your career. Again, using an abundance mindset, which is hard at times to take, but put that abundance mindset on. What is the work that gives you energy? Taking a moment. What is the work I was thinking about the last week? What's the work that I've done that I really enjoy? What is the work that is kind of draining that I want to avoid in my next chapter? What types of environments, types of teams, functions, industries am I interested in? Do a big brain dump. This stuff is all likely swirling around in your mind in different ways. It's kind of like when you're like looking to buy a car and you suddenly notice like every single car on the road. And so when you're in job search mode, you're suddenly looking at every single job that's out there. Jot these things down, right? Make a spreadsheet, start to just kind of noodle on this a little bit about what are the things that are interesting to me. And because what we need to help you figure out with as a coach when we're meeting with you is how many lanes are you going to be changing? So if you are staying in your current function in industry, so if I am a financial analyst in the consumer packaged goods space and I'm experiencing a layoff and that's the space that I want to stay in, that's not a lane change. I'm just accelerating in my current one. It's not to mean that the job search is going to be easier always, because there's always other variables we consider, like the market in general and et cetera. But that's no lane change. But if I'm thinking I want to take this time to ideate different paths, and maybe I want to make a pivot into a different industry, that's going to be changing one path, one lane. Sorry, I'm looking for different industries. I'm shifting lanes once over, and then maybe if I'm like, you know what, I'm going to take this as a full pivot point. I want to explore what it might look like to start my own business. Then we're doing more lane changes. Every time we're changing lanes, it takes a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra skill. This is what we're talking about with you in our coaching appointments, though, to help you ideate what are some of those different futures you're imagining for yourself in this lane or in other lanes. And that's the work that you've got to be doing in your brain, and talking with your board of advisors, your job search council, your trusted people, your coach. This is an example of one of our alumni who is on a search, who was like, okay, organize their thoughts into here's what I know I want to do for my kind of the next few options I could be considering longer term. Here's what I really like. Here's what I don't like doing. Organized it in this way that was just a great way to take all that stuff that was swirling around in their mind and help put it into a way that felt really succinct. We are going to we have resources embedded in this deck that you can use to just help you reflect, take you through some steps, a couple of questions, things that will help you with that. And so I'm going to now, or sorry, are there any questions, anything we want to elevate? And cool. No? Okay, because I'm going to hand it off to you oops, move here for it. So, oh wait, no. Oh yeah, no, I'm still staying with myself. I'm sorry here. I'm like, no, I'm still talking to myself. Two more slides, my bad. So as you start to figure out where you want to go, then we need to start packing that bag, right? We need to figure, now we know, okay, here's where I'm headed, and then this is what I want. This is what I need to bring with me. And that's where we talk about updating your marketing assets. That's going to be how you're telling your story. How do we, explain your career growth and what you're looking to do next and all of the great things that you've done? How do we reflect on your brand and your differentiators, why you're searching right now? And then make sure that we're building a resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profile, and interview prep materials that really help you talk about you as at your best. When you are experiencing a loss, like a like a job layoff, or you're kind of in these times of transition, that monster in your mind is real, and it can really kind of shake your confidence and impact how you're telling your story. So just always remember, your career story has to be told to somebody else in a psychologically safe space, like working with your career coach or on your personal board of advisors. Test it out with somebody else about how does this sound. Working with people in Minnesota there are things that are very, very common. Everyone's too humble. way too humble, way too humble. It's hard, can be hard for folks to elevate the me because they're super used to talking about the we of the work. And we want to help you talk about what you have done. And so there is, again, we have links, everything will be embedded so you have access to resources to help you tell that story. But this is the thing that often when we're first starting to work with someone who's experienced a layoff, the first thing they'll say is, I want to update my resume. And we get it. Like that is like, that's a natural inclination. However, your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, those are marketing tools. And we need to know what you're marketing yourself toward too. So that's why we want you to start with some reflection and then getting to this. Anything you'd like to add on this one, Nicole, before I talk about how to explain a layoff on a resume?
Oh, yeah. I would just say too, like, I think there's this like impulse to be like, I'm just need to apply for jobs. I need to like check the box that I've applied for so many, but without doing it thoughtfully, strategically, intentionally, so that like pre-work, so that you're launching the search with intention is going to make the world of difference. So I think it's just even doing like some of that self-check of like, I can't get ahead of myself. I want to make sure I'm like pointing in the right direction um, before I put time and energy into that process.
That's great. It's like, are we treading water or are we swimming in a direction, right? So
Mhm.
kind of just treading water. Common question, Coach Nicole elevated this one to make sure that we touched base on this, which I do appreciate. How do I explain this? How do I explain this layoff? Again, 40% of people will experience a layoff, and that number will probably rise. So it is much more common. Be honest on your resume about when your role ends. If you're getting severance through, a couple months from now, that's okay. Your role kind of ends at that point, but be honest about when it has ended or it will end. What we saw kind of through the pandemic is that a gap of under 6 months was kind of understandable because we just know it takes time to do a job search. And some folks, like on LinkedIn, will list it as a career break. You can also list it on your resume as a career break. This is where we want to work with you to kind of figure out what's the best way to position that based on how much space you have and what your story is. But what is most important, that our best advice we can give, is always have that growth oriented story. To say, while I was impacted by a reduction in force at my current company, I have taken this time to reassess where I want to point my next career chapter, which is what brought me to talking to you at this company. Or I really got excited about AI during this time of transition, and I've been able to take some time to lean more into learning those resources and tools. So always thinking about it from a growth perspective and what you're moving towards is our best tip. So I'm gonna
One
step. Oh yes,
one
Nicole.
thing that I would recommend here is actually writing this out and scripting this one because there's obviously so much context to how we are where we are. And so figuring out how to be really concise about that and how to have like which layers of that do you want in there. And I think actually like taking the time to write it out helps you um perv- feel like you're in the driver's seat with how you want to frame your current situation.
Pro tip. Love that. Great, great, great advice, Nicole. Okay, Nicole, take it from here.
Now we are launching the search. So once you've identified your job market fit and you've updated those marketing materials to reflect
Oh, sorry.
your skills, interests, and experience, it's time to launch. Here we go. So people often ask Bridget and I when we were preparing for this presentation, like how many hours a day should I be doing this? Like, what does this look like? Our recommendation is 2 hours a day of focused time.
Absolutely.
Have a plan, treat it as work, measure your inputs as you would in the workplace. It's We highly recommend keeping track of your networking and the applications you're submitting because it is amazing how quickly this can get confusing without doing that. So set yourself up well as you launch this search, but 2 hours a day is a good measure. Also, another pro tip for you is when you see a job on LinkedIn, when you note that there's been several applicants, it can be tempting to pass that one by, but if it is something that you're interested in, go directly to the company's website and apply there too. So we would suggest avoiding those quick applies, but going directly to the site. You show that employer you're going to do all the steps for that position. But we have to recognize that we don't know the kind of the backstory on who's applied or what exactly they're looking for. So we can't get a job that we haven't applied for.
Great point. We cannot get a job we haven't applied for. Remember that.
Yeah, and we'd hate to miss it because of an assumption we're making.
Yeah.
Okay, the focus of your day will be on researching. networking, applying, and preparing, RNAP, if you like acronyms. So, uh, when you're having that focused time, this is what we want you to be doing because each one of these 4 places is gonna be your strategic next step. And it is easy for each one of us to over-index here, kind of depending on how we're wired. And so if you find yourself over-researching, because you could research forever and not getting to the applying process, this little check-in. If networking is hard for you, we can easily avoid what feels hard and go straight to applying. But we know that strategically that is not going to be your best way. Like cold applying isn't your most strategic way to get that next opportunity. So those check-ins I think can be really helpful. I was talking to somebody this week who was like, "Oh, I have been super focused on my resume because it's like the thing that I can control." Kind of just like finding that balance of like we don't want to be have this like perfectionist mindset that ends up paralyzing us in our process. So as you're thinking through this day to day, be asking yourself, where am I getting stuck? Where might I need some more support? And do I have a tendency to over-index? And is that like disruptive to my process?
Um,
Then, as we think more about the day to day, oh, did you want to add anything, Bridget?
No,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no, yeah, you got it.
We want you to stay proactive in this process. So on this slide, we just have a list of things for you to do that kind of like self check-in. Am I identifying those companies? And once I've identified companies that are kind of my target organizations, how am I identifying people who work there so that I can spend the most time on networking? And so we have just like a list here as you're kind of thoughtfully thinking through how to stay in a proactive place versus reactive. And then this is the double click, my friends.
Mhm.
Networking, which we love to frame as crowdsourcing. I recently purchased a new washer and dryer, and who did I ask? Somebody else who did a bunch of research on that purchase. I wanted to crowdsource. What's the best product for the price? And if I'm going to go on vacation, which I am here soon, I'm going to ask people who've gone to the place I've gone to get their insight. So as we think about networking and what prevents people from um, having an active networking process, it can be just like that. It either feels ambiguous or it's kind of intimidating. But when we frame it as crowdsourcing, where we're looking for people who are in fields that we're aspiring to be in and where they might have industry insight, pursuing it that way, that we want to have conversations with people who are in jobs that they may have some career insight. And we know, and this has been really consistent over time, that 70 to 80% of jobs are going to come through networking. So this is we couldn't emphasize this piece enough. And there's so many ways to make this more manageable, including one of our resources, the 20-minute networking meeting, so that you have a framework for entering these conversations. And this is, again, something we can help you with is developing your networking strategy so that you can do this successfully.
Absolutely.
As you think about building this networking plan, here's how we think about it, that there's going to be an outreach process and that we're going to have to reach out to 10 people to hopefully get 5 responses that would turn into 3 follow-up appointments that would result in 2 meetings, and then 2 that you'd end every networking conversation with, is there anyone else you'd recommend that I continue to talk to in my search, so that you're having that snowball effect. You talk to one person, that will lead to another one. But this is where the time investment comes in, that the reach outs, we need to cast that net wide to get the responses to move forward, and that there is a setup. So going back to your RNAP, the networking is going to be a place that you're putting that time in.
Mhm. And I want to elevate one piece I think that was really timing this week in a conversation I had with a job seeker that was, there can feel that transactional component of networking, but what I just see is when our folks are leaning into that Carlson alumni community, it's you have a shared affinity. You're all Gophers, and so there's kind of a camaraderie, and people will talk about like school and like, oh, what classes are like, what did you, like where were you? And there is that rapport that kind of happens as you're asking for some career advice and some insight. And I just love when like seekers come back and then they're like, oh, I had such a great conversation with so and so. Turns out, and then they'll be like, we played on the same soccer team, and blah, there's like all these like fun, total like Carlson connections too. So while this looks like work, it's also can be kind of fun too. right? So
I love that.
yeah.
And um, one of my favorite things about my job is seeing the alumni community support one another, and the way that Carlson does that is really exciting. So cultivating those relationships too. Then best practices for leveraging LinkedIn, because as we think about your networking strategy, we want you to leverage LinkedIn, and we have a great resource for you that Carlson has provided free access for you to this LinkedIn masterclass. And so this will be linked up in follow up. There are 85 small bite-sized modules that you can click on to your taste. It's kind of like a buffet. You click on the ones that would be most helpful for you. That will give you an on-demand resource for how to leverage LinkedIn in your networking process. We want to make this as easy as possible for you, and this is a great place to um, build your skills here. Then, unfortunately, like Bridget said, we don't have the crystal ball for how this is all going to unfold. But I mean, as you know, in the job search process, it's taking months, not weeks. And so just thinking really thoughtfully about how you want to set yourself up for month one and how to stay strategic in the months following that. So just a couple ideas for you to think through as you continue in this process. And then the list of
Mhm.
items on the right-hand side of the screen, positivity, engagement, all the way down to that RNAP again. We want your days to be filled with a variety. And so what's highlighted here is just there's a variety that is going to keep your energy high and to help you stay motivated, which is that top piece in our triangle. So that's where we're going to next.
Yeah. And we put, the think, feel, do. We talk about this a lot. We can get in our heads, we can get in our feels. Then we need to get out and go do something. I often say hit stuff, and go play ping pong, play pinball, go do something. Again, 2 hours a day on the active job search, researching, networking, applying, and preparing. 8 hours a day, sure. Or maybe you're like, I want to do a one day that's 8 hours, and then that's fair. But about 2 hours a day, you know that you're going to be more succinct with your work if you are putting a time frame on yourself. And so being able to work at the time of day that works best for you, but then get out, move your body, read for fun, volunteer, do something good for others. Enjoy that as much as you can, because that's going to take care of your mind, body, and spirit. So our last section, you're going to kind of hear us going back and forth on this, because maintaining motivation and momentum is a really big part of what we do as coaches. And how many of you have gone on to logged on to LinkedIn, and you've seen someone who's like, I've just earned this new job as, like rocket surgeon, and I'm going to have this amazing job. And then it's like, just like that, right? And when we talk about motivation, sometimes some people see this and they're like, oh, I want to go and like get this new job. But what we know as coaches is that that is just the tip of things. And one, also, when you all do get a new job, you would also acknowledge all of the people who assisted and helped you along the way, because this is always a team sport. But we know that beneath that is so much more, right? There's a whole lot of things that you are experiencing, the ebbs and flows of this overall process when you're in a job search. And so know that others might not see this, but we do. We understand this as coaches, and we're part of your job search council. But it's also fair to be honest with others about, like, there are really great things that happen in this search, but there is also a lot of muscle that goes behind this, and there's these ebbs and flows. That is very, very real. So kind of talking about expectations. Oh, whoops, sorry. I'm not that. I think I'm passing it to you, Nicole.
Yes.
Sorry, my bad.
Okay, so we would encourage you to just recognize your patterns. Like Bridget said, energy is going to ebb and flow. And some days you're really going to be feeling it. And some days you're running errands and prepping for a birthday party and you lean into that. I love the idea of permission slips and the permission slips we have to give ourselves for like a day off, for evening off, to be like, oh, I need a permission slip to take a nap today and get back at it tomorrow. So it is going to ebb and flow, and we want to keep it that way too. So treating the job search like a job and setting daily and weekly deliverables, setting goals for yourself, building in accountability. That's where we want to like recognize some of our patterns. What time of day am I at my best? What are some of the factors at play that do help me stay motivated? I need to be realistic about that because I'm a human. And how can I then put in some structures so that I am moving and keeping that momentum. And I think anytime we're in doubt, invest again in those self-care routines, because we're gonna be a different version of ourselves when we've done those investments in our well-being. So when your energy and motivation is low, what does it look like to reset, and what needs to be built back in?
Totally agreed. Also thinking about the kind of the mental space that we're in as we want to keep our motivation going. We think of the anticipation zone. So the anticipation space, I use the picture of Serena Williams at the bottom there. When she's waiting for a serve to come, she is not doesn't have her feet planted and just expecting the ball is going to come exactly to where she is. Or when she's in a volley, she is on her toes and moving. And that's what we want. We can't expect every job application is going to mean you're going to get a conversation with a hiring manager in the job. We want to instead be anticipating what we can, staying loose, staying on our toes, being application and interview ready, things that we can control, and just staying on our toes, but also not letting ourselves get upset about rejections and things that are happening that are completely out of our control. We can only stay in that anticipation space. Also, things when we see candidates getting stuck, it's that they are trying to think their way into acting. That's when we hear words like should, could, would. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Act your way into thinking instead of thinking your way into acting. Set yourself up for success as you're finishing up the day today. Position yourself for success for the tomorrow morning. Start yourself with a win. I know for myself, I am much better when I start my day with a little bit of coaching, having appointments right away in the morning, as opposed to expecting myself to dig into a deep project. Bridget at rest stays at rest. I do not want to do that. I want to meet with people first. But also redefining success. Success right now in this tight market and in any job market that is significantly challenging, success is doing the stuff that's hard, sending out the applications, getting the call with a hiring manager, having the networking chat. That is success. I know it can feel like success is getting the job, but it's not. It's like a marathon. Every mile, every step is a success, and celebrate accordingly as you go.
Speaking of marathons, um, one of the things that came up in the chat was the
Oh,
best advice that this individual had received is thinking about this as a marathon, and that notion of keeping going. If we know it's a sprint, we can just like blitz forward, but pacing ourselves like a marathon.
absolutely. But also along the way in that marathon, we want you to be reflecting and adapting accordingly. And so, as we talked about earlier, there are going to be some things that come naturally to you that you're going to over index on. So we'll have folks that'll be like, oh, I love networking. I love researching roles. Okay, great. Then also let's make sure that you, as you're researching roles, you're assessing, okay, I'm going to apply to roles that are within my function and industry space. But if it's a significant pivot from that, I'm not going to. Like assessing what is it that you need. It's also what do you need? Is Coach Nicole and I did a session a while ago about navigating challenges like this. And we think about what is it that we want? What is it that we really need right now? If I'm kind of feeling in a slump or I'm feeling frustrated, things that can contribute to me getting stuck in my search, what is it that I'm really craving right now? I want control in this situation. I want to have some choice. I feel like I don't have choice. What is it that I need? And how can we elevate that? When we can really pinpoint what is ailing us and what is frustrating us, we can work towards a solution. And again, you don't have to work towards a solution on your own. We're here to help you. And also tapping into that motivation. How are you going to feel when you cross that finish line? You're going to feel good. Candidates land better. We always see this. They land better. A layoff is a moment for career redirection, but it's not the end of your story. So thinking about how is this going to feel when you get closer to it. So when it comes to that assessing, I think it's one thing to assess